Today we're taking a look at how to make your Honda Transalp more rally oriented without spending a lot of money. I'll show you what I've done to my own Transalp to make it handle better off-road, especially with suspension upgrades. I also talk about alternative parts depending on where you live, so you can find something that works for your budget and location. First we're going to talk about front suspension. From the factory, the Transalp XL600V comes with 41mm conventional forks with 200mm of travel, and the ProLink rear suspension with 187mm of travel. The cheapest and easiest upgrade is fitting Hyperpro progressive springs, both in the front and the rear. You won't gain more travel, because the old springs are likely about over 30 years old and sagging a lot. The bike will sit a little higher, the ride stays friendly for beginners or road riders, and is easy and an affordable mod. Another option is swapping the Africa Twin XRV650 forks. These are 43mm conventional forks, so they're stiffer with 220mm of travel. If you're in Europe, they're out there if you search hard enough. I got mine for about €100, but only for the fork legs themselves. If you have a single disc Transalp 600, it is basically a bolt-on upgrade. The best setup is to get both the triple clamps and the forks from the XRV 650. That way you keep the steering lock and everything works just fine. Just put in a triple into the Transalp, slide the forks in. The only thing you need is the bigger Africa Twin front disc brake. They're going from 276mm to 296mm. If you have the newer Nissan brakes, the Transalp front wheel just fits in. But if you want to keep the speedo, you'll need the Africa Twin speedo cable as well. They're not very expensive. I was all in for around €300. Another bonus of the XRV 650 forks is that they are air adjustable. So if you can't find the Africa Twin triples, but you can find the fork legs, it's no problem. You can get the XR600 Air triples. This will work. They also have a more direct feel because there are no rubber bushings in the bar mounts. You will get more vibration on the highway, but it is about off-road performance. For the XR600R, you'll need to make a small plate to keep your ignition and steering lock working, if you really want it, of course. If you can't find the XR600R triples, you can use the XR650L triples. They have a mount for the ignition switch, but the steering lock won't work. That's a bit of a bummer. It's a cheap alternative, and that's what I'm using on my bike at the moment. If you can't find the XRV60 forks at all, you can use later Africa Twin forks. They have the dual disc brake, but you also need to get the wheel of the Africa Twin, so that's a bit more expensive. Personally, I think the XRV 650 forks are the better forks. If you live somewhere the Africa Twin was never sold, or you just cannot find it, then well, I have an option for you. We already talked about the triple clamps of the XR600R and XR650L, but you can also use the forks from them. If you go with the XR600R forks, I will recommend the forks after 1991. Because then they switch to cartridge forks and they have about 280mm of travel. If you're searching and you can find a 91 or 92 model, that's the easiest to swap, because they still use the 50mm axle, the same axle as the Transalp uses. So you don't need to swap out the bearings for the front wheel, it's just a straight fit in. You can of course get the newer ones, but then you need to buy the new bearings. Once everything is in the frame, you'll need to adapt the disc brake of the Transalp. It's not that difficult to do. In the description of the video I'll put a link where all kind of mods are described, and also the fork swap. If you're going for the XR650L forks, you always have the problem of the 17mm axle, so you always need to change the bearings. If you go for the XR forks, it's 280mm in front. It's a lot. The bike gets a bit of top heavy, so if you have a bit of technical know-how, try to shorten them to 260mm, so they have more overlap with the rear and front. That's also what I'm doing with the Battle Beast build. Of course there are different forks that are described here. For the rear suspension, The options available depend on what your budget is and whether your Transalp has the drum brake or the disc brake in the rear. If you have a drum brake, you can swap the Africa Twin 650 or the 750 RDO4 swing arm. Only the 650 and the 750 RDO4 will fit without any problems. The nice thing about the Africa Twin swing arms is they are made from aluminium and they're a lot lighter. The 650 swing arm is about the same length as the Transalp swing arm, so your geometry will stay the same. You know, if you already have disc brake in the rear, the only advantage you get is a lighter rear swing arm. If you already have the rear disc brake, like I mentioned earlier, you can also go for the RDO4 swing arm. The RDO4 swing arm is a bit longer, about 2 centimeters, so it naturally lifts the rear. If you get a swing arm on eBay, have to look that you get the dog bone from the Pro Link suspension of the Africa Twin with it. If you get the one from the Transalp that your stock already have on the bike, it will fit, but it won't work well because the leverage ratio is changed and it blows to the travel way too quickly. If you're going to fit in the rear wheel and you already have the rear disc brake, you can just use your Transalp 600 rear wheel. It's the same as the XRV 650, the only thing you will need to get is the caliper bracket of the XRV 650. If you're going for an XRV 750 wheel, you can get the RDO4, RDO7 and RDO7A, no problem. You need to get the bigger caliper bracket from those bikes too. The nice thing is that you get a bigger rear disc brake, so better braking. On my own Transalp, I'm running the RDO4 swing arm, so the back sits a bit higher. I've kept the drum brake for now. It can made to fit with some filing, it's a bit of a headache. For longer travel, an Africa Twin shocks, they fit, they have more travel, they're adjustable with a remote reservoir. The good thing is they're cheap, but they're a bit old. And you also need to relocate the coolant expansion tank. So it can be a bit of a hassle, but if you're handy, it's quite doable. I still have the stock Transalp shock, but I've put on a Hyperpro progressive spring. If you go for the Africa Twin swing arm, you'll need the Africa Twin chain length and the chain guard. For my swing arm with the Pro Link, I paid about €100. If you don't want to get a second hand or older rear suspension, rear shock, and you have a bit of money to spare, you can go to Hyperpro and other manufacturers. They make great aftermarket shocks. It will be more expensive. So that's how I made my Transalp handy battle off-road without spending a fortune. The great thing is you can adapt these ideas to whatever is available in your part of the world. Whether it's in Africa Twin parts, in Europe, or XR parts somewhere else. If you've done your own suspension upgrades, drop them in the comments so others can learn from your setup. Because these are not the only options, there are way more, but this is just the easiest without too much headaches. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you next time.